Why don't we do another SEC Spring Football Focus? We've yet to rip the Charlotte Bobcats. That's to come. Time permitting. We need to do that.
We'll have a lot of time to do that.
But we need to find time to rip the Charlotte Bobcats. Let's bring in from GoVols247.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Ryan Callahan joins us here on the new Sentinel Sports page. Hey, Ryan, Vincent, Jessie, how you doing?
Hey, good. How are you guys?
We're good. Ryan, appreciate the time. Here's what we want to do with you, Ryan. We'll want to get to some recruiting notes at the end, but we just want to go position by position. Jessie and I will throw out a position, and you just give me a couple of sentences of standout, notable things, whether it's players, whether it's developments at each of those positions, not only with just a spring game, but overall in spring camp, and just kind of summarize your thoughts on each of those positions. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, well, lightning round through them, just a couple sentences on each. Let's go backwards here because we always start at the quarterback. Why don't we go backwards, and I want to start with the kickers. Give me your thought on this group in spring.
Well, it's Michael Pilardi, obviously a tough spring game, and Derek Brodus missed a kick too, but it sounded like both had a good spring in some ways, and Pilardi showed some improvement on kickoffs, so it sounds like there's progress, but we'll see.
What about a defensive back in the secondary?
Well, lots of guys there that have experience, but still no one standing out at the cornerback position. The safety spot looks a lot better than it did at the start of the spring with Byron Moore emerging and also Brent Brewer back there after starting at linebacker at the start of the spring.
Linebacker is a little bit more, it's more complicated because of the extra positions and the versatile players. Give me your thoughts on that on the linebacking group and what stood out for you in spring.
Starting to settle in a little bit better there. They got plenty of depth at the outside spots, it looks like, with guys like Willie Bohannon as backups. In the middle, a little bit more depth challenge, but still it looks like things are falling into place a little bit there. Good spring for Herman Lathers to prove he's healthy.
Anybody stand out to you on the defensive line this spring?
I think Stephen Fultz and Greg Clark are two guys that I think if you're a Tennessee fan, you got to be encouraged that those two started to emerge a little bit. Stephen Fultz especially had a really good spring, and Clark, it looks like, really may help at nose tackle.
Ryan, let me follow up on that real quick. How much of a concern is it that Darrington Centimore was on the second team at DN when a lot of us just pretty much penciled him in one of those end spots?
Yeah, I think he had a little bit tougher spring than some people thought. I don't know if we should say he's struggling or anything like that, but I think they see a talented player who needs to improve and become more consistent to reach his full potential. So he still has a chance to be a starter this fall, but we'll see. They may have just been challenging him.
Let's flip over to the offensive side, the offensive line. I think a lot of people are feeling better about new offensive line coach. A lot of depth there on the up front.
Yeah, I think the offensive line definitely has got to be viewed as one of the overall team strengths. A good situation when Zach Fultz is battling for a starting job with James Stone. And otherwise a pretty settled in line. The left side really worked out, moving Antonio Richardson to left tackle, sliding Dallas Thomas inside the left guard. So they feel pretty good about that group right now.
Now, the tight ends and the fullbacks, when we looked at the roster that we got at the spring game, the tight ends and the fullbacks are together as basically the wide receiver group. You see the tight ends at the H-back an awful lot. Give me your thoughts on those two positions now basically combined into one.
I think you got to feel pretty good if you're Tennessee about your tight ends. That's another spot. They look really good this spring. Cameron Clear really starting to emerge. Brennan Downs even had a nice spring game. And then Ben Bartholomew, a solid presence there at fullback. I think you'll see Michael Rivera have a chance to have a pretty big year, too.
In the wide receiving core, how much stock do you put in Jacob Carter right now as far as his ability to get on the football field during the fall?
Yeah, I think he could be a guy who can help on special teams at least. We'll see. Obviously a lot of competition coming in this summer with guys like Dre Bowles, Big Howard, Jason Kroon, Cordell Patterson, of course. Going to be a lot of competition there. But so far, I think they've got to be pleased with what they got accomplished this spring, considering Justin Hunter got back out there and showed what he can do.
How do you assess the camp of the quarterbacks?
Well, I think Tyler Bray had a good spring. We heard nothing but good things about his mental approach. Nathan Peterman emerged as a potential at least contender there for that backup spot, maybe before ending his spring with a finger injury. And then Justin Worley, a pretty good spring by all accounts. So I think they feel really good about their overall progress at that spot.
And finally, just assess the running backs.
Well, that's the big one. A lot of people are keeping their eye on. I think still going to be a competition up until the start of the spring. Rajon Neal and Marlon Lane, of course, the two guys. But Devin Young had a really good spring. Of course, Offensive Surprise Award went to him. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out in the fall, also with Devontae Bork thrown into the mix.
Ryan Callahan joining us from GoVols247.com. Out of the guys that have not gotten on campus as of yet that you think have the best shot to play, a couple come to mind, but give me a few besides the one, the most obvious that fans are going to point to. Give me a couple that you think have the best chance to play as newcomers here in the fall.
Well, I think the obvious ones that stand out to most people, the nose tackle, Daniel McCullers, receiver, Cordell Patterson, both the junior college guys, and then maybe the freshman running back, Devontae Bortz, I just mentioned. And in addition to those guys, I'd say maybe Pig Howard or Jason Kroom, their receiver. Pig Howard could be moved around in a couple different spots. Then on defense, I think Deion Bonner and Ladero McNeil are both guys to watch in the secondary. I think both those guys could have a chance to pitch in early. Not as much of a need for McNeil to start now, maybe, as there was at the start of the spring, but he still could, and he certainly still could play some.
How much shot do you give George Bullock from West High School to come in and starting a job?
And another name I was just about to mention, I think Bullock's definitely a guy you have to watch after the way the kicking game struggled in the spring game, and no one really has started to take a stranglehold on that job yet. I think you still got to look at Bullock as at least a strong threat for the kickoff job, if nothing else, and then beyond that, we'll see. But he certainly could compete for place kicking too, and maybe even punting. He's done that pretty well too at times.
Talking Tennessee football, Ryan Callahan from GoVols247.com. You can follow Ryan on Twitter. It's Ryan Callahan 247 on Twitter, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. All right, let's segue into some recruiting. A lot of fans asking about the visit of Derrick Henry, the 5-star athlete who's been here before. Give me your thoughts on how this went for Tennessee over the weekend.
Sound like another impressive visit for him, to get on campus again for 2 or 3 days, and he was on campus for just about as long last time. So to get him in town twice in a span of about 3 weeks, I think Tennessee's got to feel really good about where they are. Still committed to Georgia right now, but I think Tennessee's definitely in this one. We'll see. He says he's going to just keep coming back and see how things go. So I think they've got to be encouraged about where things are, but still a long way to go in that one.
Ryan, I know you don't get too much insight onto how recruiting trips go, but what's the difference between a guy coming in for the orange and white game as opposed to a guy coming in for an actual regular season football game? How are they treated differently?
Well, not a whole lot differently from a football game. The main difference is probably the spring practice compared to the orange and white game. Not nearly as much time with coaches at the orange and white game. It's very much like a game. They get to see them for a few minutes maybe before the game, talk to them a little bit after if they hang around. And otherwise, it's mostly watching the game and mingling with players and things like that. So, and then, of course, touring the campus a little bit if they get there early. So not a whole lot of one-on-one time with coaches when you've got a big visit weekend like that for the spring game, but still a lot of benefits to getting kids on campus for a weekend like that.
Now, Henry is the number 1 overall prospect on 24/7. Is that right?
He's the number 1 athlete. He's
athlete,
the number 13 overall prospect, but he is a 5-star prospect, yes.
Okay, and then number 13 overall, number 1 athlete. That's what I managed to say, right? So are there other guys that are on that level and that range, that highly recruited, that Tennessee you think has a chance to get on campus at some point here, even during their senior years?
Well, they've already gotten a couple guys at that level on campus. Kendall Fuller, a big-time cornerback from up in Maryland, already been on campus. I think there's a chance you can see Montrevious Adams on campus at some point, a big-time defensive tackle from down in Georgia. He's up to the number 3 overall prospect in the 2013 class on 24/7 Sports. So I think there's some other guys there that you could see coming in, and Tennessee already has had a few in town. But certainly Henry is probably the guy the highest on the list right now for Tennessee that they've got the best shot at as far as overall ranking.
And how would you assess the visit of Jalen Reeves-Maben?
Well, it sounds like a good visit. He's been on Tennessee's campus quite a bit over the past several months. Since November, I think this was his 4th visit, starting with the Vanderbilt game at the end of last season. And Tennessee's still in good shape with him. I think they've got to be viewed as one of the teams to beat, if not the team to beat. I think it's going to be maybe Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, maybe those 3 teams, probably the ones to watch right now, and maybe even Georgia Tech thrown in there. So I think Tennessee's in really good shape, though, right now, and we'll see. They might make a decision possibly by the end of the summer, so it may not be too much longer before he makes up his mind.
Were there any other visits that of note that guys had some good things to say about being in town for the spring game?
Well, I think certainly anytime Jalen Ramsey's on campus, that's a good thing for Tennessee. He's been on campus a lot himself too, and a high priority for Tennessee. It's a 7th or 8th trip to campus at least. And then I think also to get guys like Kelsey Griffin, the defensive tackle from down in Georgia, and Antonio Riles, get those guys on campus Lyle's had good things to say. I think Florida and Georgia still teams to beat there maybe, but Tennessee right in the mix after getting him on campus again, second time since October. So I think they certainly helped themselves with a few guys this weekend. Elijah Daniel, also a defensive end from up in Indiana, that they had good things to say about the visit. I think Tennessee may have a shot at them. And a few other guys last week, Derwin Gray and Yannick Ngakoue from up in D.C. Made the trip down, and they both seem to be really impressed, especially Derwin Gray, who's another highly rated guy, the number 33 overall player in the country and a big-time offensive tackle.
Ryan Callahan covering recruiting and Tennessee football for GoVols247.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can follow him on Twitter, Ryan Callahan 247. Ryan, thanks so much for helping us out through spring football. We'll definitely talk some recruiting with you again here real soon.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Ryan. That's Ryan Callahan joining us here on the new Sentinel Sports page.